the region of 6 to 8%, except for the year 2020. And this has been possible because of the very strong ecosystem which has been created in the last 75 years, what you saw just now, through the presentation of the various secretaries. The institutions which we have created in the academic sector, the public sector and the private sector institutions which has been playing a major role in the industrialization of the nation. The major national laboratories, you heard the space, the atomic energy, and I come from defense, all of them have been responsible for creating the right ecosystem. And today, this growth what you are seeing has been mainly because of the kind of S&T ecosystem which has been created. The trajectory of our GDP has also changed significantly after 1992 because of the liberalization which we have set in as far as the economic policies are concerned. And that has also been enabled by the what we call as the IT enabled and IT services, which has given a major boost to our economy. In this particular, all this has happened mainly because you found that we have a major investments coming from the government of India in all these sectors. And that significant contribution should come not through purely looking at what we are able to do for the benefit of the society alone, but the science and technology to benefit the society. I have been privy to some of the statements which the Honorable Chief Ministers of various states have made. They said that we are going to contribute X billion dollars to this 5 trillion economy. Somebody said, why $1 billion? Now all this is not feasible unless there is a significant contribution which comes in the field of science and technology. So the investment in the science and technology from the states is the requirement of the hour. And that is the point which we want to discuss today. And that is the theme of this conference also. Now, this investment cannot be done in isolated manner. It has to be a synergy between the center and the state, which will drive this agenda. So today's discussion is going to be that, and I'll urge my participants that they should focus on some of the points and the challenges which have been identified by the organizers for bringing this particular synergy between the center and the state to achieve what will be India at 2047 in terms of the goals which have been set up by our Honorable Prime Minister. I close with this. I'll come back in the end with some of the suggestions on this subject. Thank you very much. And I would like to, may I now take the opportunity to invite Dr. Shailesh Nayak. I'm sorry, I think because he has a flight to catch, so I'll give him the chance to speak first. Thank you, please.
Good evening, and thanks, Dr. Saraswat. Thanks, the organizers, Dr. Gupta, for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to connect, and I think Chair has already set out the broad contours of our discussion by mentioning the fact that the focus has to be in terms of our economic contribution that we need to make. And if I can just introduce myself very quickly, three sort of engagements that I have in terms of, as an economist, I'm on the Board of Governors of the Reserve Bank of India. I'm also Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission of Madhya Pradesh and Director General of RIS, which is a think tank on key international economic issues with Ministry of External Affairs. So the points that I want to make in 5 to 7 minutes that I have would be as follows. Number one, coming from my state of Madhya Pradesh, the issues that we need to consider when we are talking about science, technology, innovation, they come up in terms of our idea of economic growth, which has been very well captured by PSA Professor Sood and chair of this session, Dr. Saraswat. In case of state and state administrations that are grappling with a number of issues, I think it is absolutely essential for us to see how we can dovetail demand on technology and how technology providers can actually meet the challenges on the ground. And those challenges would not be possible simply by launching programs which we did in 70s and 80s I think we would have to go beyond science society frameworks. And I'm so glad that DST is going out of its ways to amend the mandate of those programs. And if I pick up case of Madhya Pradesh, the state is growing at 18% when it comes to the overall economy, and 21% when it comes to agriculture. In fact, the first three-quarter results that were declared last year, Madhya Pradesh was the fastest growing state with 19.4% till in the fourth quarter when Odisha took over, but still Madhya Pradesh remained the third fastest growing state. And this is the way when Madhya Pradesh has already achieved the 11.9 lakh crore sort of takeover that is needed. And as Chair mentioned, Prime Minister asked everyone a question as to what would be your contribution. And from Madhya Pradesh, through a committee which I myself chaired, we have given the recommendation of $550 billion would be Madhya Pradesh's contribution, which at this point stands at $122 billion. And we identified how much bioeconomy would contribute. And Dr. Gokhale, the Secretary of DBT, was mentioning in the last session about bioeconomy's contribution in each state. And that's where the calculations have been done. We are hearing in the previous session with the ministers about the idea of semiconductors. And I heard 3 ministers mentioning about their state specific policies on semiconductors. Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, the ministers mentioned. So the point here is that all states are trying to target those areas where we see an upstream growth and growth multipliers. Now we would have to see what are the possible impediments. Would it be raised to the bottom, or would it be a collective race? What kind of value chains we can think of? Because everybody can't enter in the high end. So somebody would have to enter in the low end. So can we have a choreographed orchestra where people can play according to their strengths? And that's what Dr. Saraswat, I feel, would be extremely important in terms of us to identify the strengths, and that comparative advantage can keep on growing. It can, the frontier can keep on moving, and that would require 3 or 4 broad areas to address. One, we cannot dream of something. We heard this morning that we can be leaders in semiconductors. It can't happen. It can't happen in 1 generation. It may require probably 2 generations, because we have seen the trajectory of economics, of technology. And fortunately, as an economist, I have dedicated almost 35 years of my career as economist in technology. So I have seen the trajectory of growth of industries across the world. And we cannot claim that we would do the quantum jump that is required. So from that point of view, a realistic planning would have to be done. And I see 4 areas which are extremely important here. First and foremost is finance, and that finance has to be made. Unfortunately, as I see in some state governments, IT administration, IT governance, portal-related expenditures, all are being clubbed with science and technology. We would have to decipher that at levels that are required. So that's point number 1, to identify a clear focus for our STI allocation and delineate the fixed cost expenditures of salaries, etc. Otherwise, what is happening with the science councils that I see, whatever the central government money comes in, whatever state government gives, they even it out with salary expenditure. No money for R&D, no money for even creating culture for science, technology and innovation. So that's my point number 1. Point number 2 is in terms of human resources. What kind of technology we are aspiring for, what kind of FDI and technology we are looking at, and what kind of manpower we have in the state to supply or to get absorbed. So that's the second, skills is the second issue. The third is in terms of how we look at with the relative advantage of the state. So if a state is a hilly state, state is full with forest area, state which has manufacturing, state which has connectivity issues, etc., etc. So those different strengths and weaknesses would also have to be factored in. And that's why a more state-centric program rather than central common programs for everyone, we would have to dispense away with that kind of approach. State-specific requirements. What Honorable Minister was inquiring from the state ministers today in terms of what is their priority, what do they need? And I think the time has come now that instead of programs, we give money to the state and let them evolve the program, and whatever hand-holding they need. Requirement of Andhra Pradesh may be very different from Karnataka, and Karnataka's requirement may be very different from Gujarat. And if these top states are left, the bottom ones may have very different requirements. My fourth and the last point is in terms of the horizontal connect across the departments. And that's where technology push would be extremely important. If Madhya Pradesh is growing at a pace which is not seen even in Punjab now when it comes to wheat production or even paddy cultivation, we need to see how food processing industry and relevant technologies are to be provided to state. So from that point of view, I think it is extremely important. So these 4 points I wanted to make in terms of states. But the last point that I want to make is in terms of statistics on science technology at the state level. And I think this requires much more focused attention, because as a planner in the state of Madhya Pradesh, the one thing that I'm grappling with is the whole challenge of data, of statistics, in terms of how do we see that horizontality coming in? How do we see foreign direct investment and budgetary allocations coming in? And that requires a very clear picture in terms of both statistics, the parameters that finance department of the state would require, and what the central government would give. The interesting approach that I am noticing now in the working of the central government is the convergence. The convergence that Prime Minister is talking about across the state departments and across departments within the central government. And I think that would be a major solution in terms of more siloed approach or compartmentalized approach that we are having. I would stop with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sachin. Now may I invite Shri Neerab Kumar Prasad, the Chief Secretary, Department of Environment, Forest, Science and Technology, Government of Andhra Pradesh.
Moderator for the panel, Dr. Saraswat, my fellow colleagues in the panel, all the participants in this conference, ladies and gentlemen. It's a privilege to be here, and I will limit myself to the topic which is on future growth pathways and vision for STI in states. The Andhra Pradesh State Council has been focused on developing programs, schemes, implementing the schemes of DST, rooted to encouraging the students in the schools to participate and get into the education fields of science, research, and other activities. They have also focused on setting up of a regional science center at Rajahmundry. I am afraid beyond these few activities, the state councils have not been very active in Andhra Pradesh, both before the bifurcation and after the bifurcation. I would appeal to the departments of science and technology that perhaps to begin with, we need to undertake a lot of capacity building of the state S&T councils. And I think that would be the starting point so that we can build up on the institutional strengths which can take us to the next level of the goals which we set up in this pathway. I would suggest that the scientific institutions available in the major towns or cities around Vizag, Tirupati or Hyderabad could be associated to play the mentor's role with these state councils so that they can effectively deliver on all the schemes. I can talk of a number of new initiatives that the state councils can take up under the SSTP schemes, like target college students, encourage PhDs and research among the universities, promoting of the R&D and industries collaborations, academic institutions, And I am very happy and to note that Andhra Pradesh has already been included in the Patents Information Center list, and I thank the Department of Science and Technology. I can assure you that we'll see that it takes up very nicely. What I would like to mention are now few items which are really going to be very, very path-breaking and important for the nearly all the states which we are considering when we see. All of us know that land is a very, very important resource, and the revenue administration, virtually with few exceptions, are in shambles all over the country. And I would request especially Secretary Science and Technology